Thank you very much, Dick. Ned, thank you for allowing us to join you here today. Let me first thank the people of Connecticut. These are extraordinary times, and all across this state, ordinary citizens are stepping up and doing the right thing for their neighbor, offering to go pick up groceries so an elderly neighbor doesn't have to do it for themselves, offering to do a chore that someone who is quarantined cannot. And of course, making daily decisions to engage in self-distancing and following the governor's recommendations to stay home and to stay safe and to limit your interactions to small groups of no more than 5. This is a unique threat to the nation. It is a threat that government cannot defeat alone. It can only be met, it can only be conquered if ordinary, average citizens decide to step up and do the right thing day after day after day. Governor Lamont has been ahead of the curve from the very beginning. Senator Blumenthal is right. He has been a leader in Connecticut, but he has also been a national leader. He has modeled responses that other states are following, and we are very lucky to have him. As he mentioned, he and I think, talk every day, making sure that he knows what's coming from the federal government, but also to make sure that we are molding federal policy to meet what Connecticut needs. And I think that this package that we passed last night in the Senate will be effective in staving off catastrophe. But it is not the end of our work. I don't want to go over everything that Senator Blumenthal did already, but let me note that the Treasury is hoping to send out these cash payments to families within the next 3 weeks. This will be an important infusion of money, not just into individual families, but also into the economy writ large. Those unemployment benefits are not only extended for 4 additional months, recognizing that people are going to be unemployed for a longer period of time now than in previous recessions, but they are increased by $600 per week. That's a significant increase. The average unemployment benefit check in this country is somewhere just short of $400. So an additional $600 per week will make a big difference. And then lastly, we have molded this new unemployment insurance program to make sure that it takes care of as many self-employed workers and gig economy workers as we can. And so if you are self-employed and you are no longer receiving income, do not assume that you are not eligible for unemployment. Please call up the unemployment office, call our offices to see if you are newly eligible for unemployment insurance under the terms of this legislation. Let me thank the governor for his input on the small business assistance portion of this bill. It is true that he and I had early conversations about his desperate worry that businesses in Connecticut, small businesses, would go temporarily out of business, but then would never reopen. And it was his advocacy that led to this bill ending up in a place where it provides not loans that need to be repaid, but forgivable loans that do not need to be repaid if you hire your workers back, in addition to a small grant program of $10,000 that can be used right now for emergency spending outside of the loan program. A couple other pieces, just to mention, student loan payments, federally backed student loan payments are suspended for the period of this crisis. Really important for thousands of families that didn't know how they were going to make those payments over the course of the next few months. There's $30 billion in this bill for elementary and secondary education and higher education. Connecticut eats, sleeps, and breathes higher education. It's one of our strengths. And we were very worried that some of our colleges might not be able to survive. They will, now that they have this temporary funding. And schools, even though they're closed, are having to engage in all sorts of additional expenses to feed kids, to engage in distance learning, more funding coming for that. And finally, $100 billion for hospitals. Connecticut generally gets about 1 to 1.5% of all federal grants. So that means a sizable amount of money in the neighborhood of $1 billion coming to Connecticut's hospitals to make sure that we can engage in all of the additional services that we need to. And I'm going to be looking forward to working with the governor to make sure that that money lands where it needs to. And then finally, of course, the state stabilization money. Governor, I spoke a number of times yesterday as we were dotting the I's and crossing the T's on that state stabilization fund that will help Connecticut pay the bills and make sure that we can take care of folks. I agree with Senator Blumenthal, there's still a lot more work to do. In particular, we have an ongoing crisis of medical equipment in this country. The governor mentioned that testing is going to slow down in part because we don't have enough personal protective equipment to go around to the folks that are working the med-surg units and the workers who are doing the testing. But we also are reaching our testing capacity limit in this country. And so the next most immediate job for the federal government, in conjunction with state governments, is to dramatically expand our capacity to make things that are necessary in order to meet the public health challenge. That, to my mind, means the federal government taking ownership of the manufacture and supply of critical medical equipment. It is beyond me as to why this president has not chosen to put into action the Defense Production Act, which would dramatically increase the manufacture of personal protective equipment and tests and ventilators. And it is also inexplicable as to why the president does not take control of the supply chain. The amount of time that states and hospitals have to spend rooting around for medical equipment and ventilators is barbaric. It is unnecessary, and it is wildly inefficient. We've got to do better at the federal level. Lastly, let me just thank all the frontline health workers. They are true heroes at this moment. Your job is first and foremost to keep yourself safe, but you are modeling behaviors for this state and this country that people are going to be grateful for years to come. Thank you, Governor, for inviting us here today.